This is Cornstalks and Sports Talk, your go-to Iowa-based sports show, hosted by the one and only Eliot Clough.
Prescription products require completion of an online medication consultation with an independent healthcare provider through the LifeMD platform and are only available if prescribed. Subscription required. Individual results may vary. Additional restrictions apply at lifemd.com. Read all warnings before using GLP-1s. Side effects may include a risk of thyroid C-cell tumors. Do not use GLP-1s if you or your family have a history of thyroid cancer.
If you've struggled for years to lose weight and have given up hope, did you know you can now access GLP-1 prescription medications through LifeMD? LifeMD is now offering eligible patients online access to GLP-1s, the breakthrough prescription medication that can help you lose body fat and weight. Listen to what people are saying.
You just take your shot. It doesn't feel like you're on a diet. What I wasn't expecting it to do was to shut off the food noise. This was life-altering, and if I can do it, I feel like anybody can do it.
And here's the best part. Your insurance may cover 100% of the cost of your medication. So go to trylifemd.com to have your eligibility checked right now. Get started today at trylifemd.com. That's trylifemd.com.
What's up, Cedar Valley, and hello to the Hawkeye State. This is Cornstalks and Sports Talk, your Iowa-based sports show here on AM 950 KOEL and KOEL.com. My name is Eliot Clough at Eliot Clough on Twitter. Today's show is loaded with some recruiting talk. Alyssa Hertel of the Des Moines Register, she's a recruiting reporter for them. She joins us to break down the recent additions to the Iowa State 2023 football recruiting class. And then Sean Bach, Iowa Hawkeye recruiting reporter from 24/7 Sports and Hawkeye Insider. He joins us to do the exact same thing, but for the Hawkeyes in that 2023 class, specifically Kendrick Rayfield, the new 2023 four-star running back that just committed out of Naples, Florida. Hawkeye fans are very, very excited about that. And what I want to do first as a UNI insider, your UNI insider for Townsquare Media, is to tell you about the two new additions to the UNI basketball roster for the 2022-2023 season. Of course, we've talked a little bit more about Charlie Miller and Trey Campbell to a certain degree. He, of course, is a Cedar Falls native, and this roster now is absolutely loaded, jacked with folks from the Cedar Valley, young men from Cedar Falls specifically. But the big one, the more recent one who will be on scholarship added to this roster, of course, Trey Campbell is as well, but Ega Peksari from Turkey. And I'm sure you're sitting listening to this and thinking, one more time? Who is that? And from Turkey, right. And I thought the exact same thing when this news popped up on my feed on Twitter. I'd heard a few things about it, but at the same time, it popped up and I thought, is that fake? That's got to be fake, because kid from Turkey playing basketball in Iowa, let alone for UNI, where the recruiting trail for the Panthers has almost always, at least under head coach Ben Jacobson, been in the state of Iowa and then the state of Minnesota, specifically the Minneapolis area. But one thing drastically changed the recruiting trail for UNI, at least from my perspective, and that's Seth Tuttle. Seth Tuttle, of course, maybe the greatest basketball player in UNI history, if not one of the best. All-American, of course. He went overseas and played for a few years professionally before returning to the States as a grad assistant for UNI men's basketball and then getting a full-time job after Kyle Green left for Iowa State. But because of those connections he's built overseas, this has to be a reason why they were able to find Ega Peksari from Turkey. He's an 18-year-old who has played in a few different leagues, and I'm almost not even going to try to pronounce it, but I will see if I can find it in a moment just here. I wrote an article about adding Ega to the UNI roster as well. That's on the KOEL.com website as well as the KOEL app. And again, I'm going to try to pronounce it the best I can. Well, first of all, he's a 6'4 guard from Izmir, Turkey. Again, he'll be on scholarship coming over from overseas. And he played for Akron Gemlik in the Turkey Basketball League, where he averaged 2.6 points, 2.3 rebounds, and 1.5 assists per game over 28 contests in 14.5 minutes per game. This last year, he played for Tofas Sports Club during the 2020 and 2021 TBL season as well. And it's going to be a lot of difficult pronunciations for announcers coming in and for those covering UNI men's basketball. But the reason those averages were so low, to my mind's eye, is that he was playing up with professionals, which you can do over a season, then come to the United States and play at the collegiate level. He's always playing up a level and playing against some grown men at the age of 16, 17, 18. He's going to be 19 by the beginning of the season and will, I'm assuming, grow a little bit over the summer. He's also played for Turkey in international competition, which is huge. That competition and that level of coaching takes young guys to the next level, and he's going to be able to apply that here in Cedar Falls for UNI. The other thing that I was able to find was that let's see here. Again, pronunciations. Yeah, they're doing me in. It's the second year that Tofas has sent one of their players to America to play NCAA Division I basketball. Ata Atsurin received a scholarship from Drexel University in 2021. According to the Turkish basketball website basketfall.com, Atsurin played in just 2 games for the Dragons his freshman season, but still, this is a program that makes Division I basketball players, and if you watch any of the film, you can see the film and some of his highlights in that article on the KOEL website. Well, if you watch that film, this kid sees the floor so well. He makes his teammates better. The shooting percentage from 3 is going to probably be rough for the first few years of his career in Cedar Falls, but he's got the stroke, and like, it's not like he can't make it. Like, the form is there. It's all about putting it together and making shots on a consistent basis. He will not be in Cedar Falls until the fall or until this coming semester, because this summer he's working out with the under-20 national team in hopes of making their 12-man roster that will compete in the European Championships in July. That's according to Coach Jake, and that quote is again in the KOEL.com article. Same article, we've got our interview with Charlie Miller there if you happen to miss it. But anyway, very excited about this. International guys don't come to play at UNI, at least in terms of basketball. And you might think, oh, Ali Farokhmanesh, he's actually from the States. But that's probably the closest name that UNI basketball has had to something like Ega Peksari. Very excited to see what he can bring to this team. Who knows? Maybe he could step in and compete for a job right away. That's to be seen, of course, because Nate Heisey is in that backcourt. They're bringing in Trey Campbell, who I know a lot of UNI men's basketball fans are excited about. He's a guy that's going to come in and compete for a job right away. And then you got Landon Wolf, who sat on the bench last year due to injury, as well as just redshirting for that matter. Charlie Miller's going to come in and redshirt. Then you got Bowen Bourne, who obviously is going to get some time playing in the obviously going to get some time in the backcourt. The young guard, he's gonna contribute really well. And then, of course, Michael Duax is coming in. He's a 6'6 guard/forward, so the wing. He might have the ball in his hands a little bit at the guard position as well. One other addition that I was told about today, and that's up on my Twitter page. Probably won't write an article about it, but maybe I will. We'll see. An addition to the UNI men's basketball roster by way of walk-on. Again, we're talking about the UNI men's basketball roster right now and a little bit of recruiting here on Cornstalks and Sports Talk on AM 950 KOEL and KOEL.com with me, Eliot Clough, UNI insider for Townsquare Media. And so that other addition via walk-on to the UNI men's basketball roster, which is loaded with walk-ons at this point, is Hunter Jacobson. Hunter Jacobson, son of head coach Ben Jacobson. No, it's not the top 100 recruit. It's not AJ Green, son of Kyle Green, who, of course, Kyle was the associate head coach for UNI men's basketball for quite a while. But it's an addition of a kid who is a coach's son, and that's the same thing for Charlie Miller, who will be on the roster this year, will redshirt. And I can only assume that Hunter Jacobson's going to redshirt as well. But he's coming in, the son of head coach Ben Jacobson, and he didn't play at all for the Tigers this last season in basketball due to injury. Same thing for football. He got hurt towards the end of the season and wasn't able to help them get much further or any further that they wanted to go in the state playoffs for football. But Jacobson is a gifted athlete. He played basketball, football, and ran track for the Tigers. He earned all Metro and all conference honors in basketball, football, and track. His junior season, he scored 104 points while shooting 52.7% from the field, 61 rebounds, 45 assists, 18 steals, and he helped the Tigers reach the 4A state tournament in 2021. They went to the semifinals. And if anything, I mean, you look at the football stats that he put up over his career: 17 career touchdowns, 53.6 completion rate for passing, 1,300 yards passing, also carried the ball 486 yards and 3 touchdowns on 106 carries. He's an athlete. If anything, he's an athlete. He is I believe, 6'2 guard. I think I saw that. Just give me one moment here. 6'2 guard that the Panthers are adding to their roster. And it's similar to the 6'2 guard. It's similar to the idea of bringing in like an Adam McDermott back in the day. It's a kid who you take a chance on. Maybe he competes for a job. Maybe he doesn't. And if anything, it's an addition by way of culture. I mean, obviously he's Coach Jake's son. Coach Jake has done a phenomenal job in Cedar Falls with UNI men's basketball. And if he ends up competing for a job, maybe getting a job later on in his career, awesome. If he can contribute on the floor, fantastic. For right now, adding walk-ons, it's almost the risk-reward ratio is almost perfect because you're not using up scholarships. Obviously, Coach Jake only brings in guys who are good for the team in terms of, culture or academics or what have you. I mean, you look at the roster right now and the walk-ons that are there. You got Charlie Miller, who's the grandson of Eldon Miller. He can shoot the lights out of the ball. Derek Krogman, who he's a walk-on. He is fantastic in terms of academics. Again, Hunter Jacobson, who is the son of Coach Jake. Drew Daniel, who is a great guy. He's awesome on the bench, very fun to watch. Next time you're at a UNI men's basketball game and somebody hits a three, just watch Drew Daniel. And so I think adding Jacobson definitely doesn't hurt. It fills out a roster spot. If they decide not to use maybe even both of those following 2 scholarships that are left, it's a roster spot filled. And you got guys coming back. You got Austin Fife back. You got Titan Anderson back. You got Michael Duax, who's going to compete for a job this year, who's probably going to play pretty well this year. You got Bowen Bourne back. You got Trey Campbell, who I kind of highly doubt is going to redshirt. I think he's going to play this year. Landon Wolf, who's back, no redshirt. Ega Peksari, who will probably compete for something, I think, this year. Maybe not. Cole Henry back. Nate Heisey back. For a long time, I was pretty worried about UNI men's basketball, and it might not turn out the way UNI fans want it to coming this season. But there is talent on this roster. You got walk-ons to fill it out. And you got 2 more scholarships if somebody in the transfer portal pops up and you're like, maybe we want you here. Of course, recruiting still going on for UNI men's basketball for 2023 as well. Matt Reed, super versatile big, 6'8" or 6'9" center who will be the 2023 player that UNI is recruiting pretty heavily. He is being sought out by some high major programs, so we'll see what happens. But he did say that he wants to go somewhere where he can compete for a job right away. Like I said, super versatile, super skilled big. He can shoot the ball from deep. Very excited about the possibility of adding somebody like that. UNI basketball, there's only been a few, quote, rebuilding years in Coach Jake's tenure. More recently, I can think of Jeremy Morgan's senior year when it was like Jeremy, Jordan Ashton, the transfer from Iowa State, and Bennett Cook, and then you're just kind of hoping for wins here and there. And, AJ Green's freshman year to a degree, of course, they made the MVC championship that year. But anyway, I am, there isn't the level of confidence that you would have if you're watching UNI men's basketball and AJ Green and Noah Carter are coming back, right? It's not that same level of confidence. But I have the same level of confidence I do in Coach Jake that I always do. They're bringing in talent. They're going out of they're thinking out of the box, so to speak, adding a guy from Turkey, and they're adding walk-ons. They're building culture like they always do for UNI men's basketball. So it's not the end of the world. This team will compete. And even on the rebuilding years, they're not awful. So I almost completely disregarded the 2020-2021 season, or that season. That was pretty rough. But no AJ Green that season, and we kind of knew that was going to happen coming into 2022-2023. So I believe in the Panthers. We will see what comes of these new recruits and what they'll do for Panther basketball in the future. For right now, you're listening to Cornstalks and Sports Talk on AM 950 KOEL. Don't go anywhere. Up next, we're talking with Alyssa Hertel. She's telling us about the 2023 recruiting class for Iowa State football. She's from the Des Moines Register. It'll be good stuff. Again, stick around. We'll be right back here on Cornstalks and Sports Talk. We're back here on Cornstalks and Sports Talk on AM 950 KOEL and KOEL.com with me, Eliot Clough, at Eliot Clough on Twitter. Iowa State has had a hot go of it as of late on the recruiting trail. A ton of young men coming to campus on their official visits and deciding they want to be Cyclones come 2023. Now joining us is recruiting reporter from the Des Moines Register, Alyssa Hertel. Alyssa, tell us, do you know what sparked all these commitments within the last week? Because it just seems like it's been back to back to back for the Cyclones.
Yeah, I mean, I think the easy answer would say that some recruits were inspired by JJ Cole, but, JJ Cole committed at this point, what feels like months ago. I mean, I think it was in April. So obviously, that might have played a part, but I think, getting these kids on campus and getting them around, other recruits that are both committed and on the fence all at the same time kind of played into that. I think that was kind of the biggest factor.
Is there anything in terms of, I don't know, and we're getting to the weeds right away by me asking this, but is there anything in terms of how Iowa State goes about the recruiting process now for more of these local guys? Because I know typically, I mean, when you think about recruits in the state of Iowa, you think about these homegrown kids who maybe end up going to the University of Iowa, getting in their weight program, gaining a bunch of weight, and then they become what they become for the Hawkeyes. Maybe kids go to UNI, they might be overlooked. Iowa State hasn't typically been that school where they have a bunch of in-state guys. Have they, I don't know, flip their process or how they go about recruiting more of the in-state players?
I do think Matt Campbell's a big part of that. I think he's really an active head coach in the recruiting process, wants to be, in person when these kids are getting the offers, in person when these kids are doing the visits, showing them that, even before they get on campus, that he's there. He cares about the program. He cares about who's coming into the program. I think you can see that with Kai Black. Like he was there when Kai got his first Division I offer, and it was from Iowa State. And then, leading off of that, Iowa State, every recruit I've talked to says that Iowa State was the one that went after them the hardest. And so I think, that obviously factors into it. When a kid's trying to pick a school, you're going to want to go to the one that wants you the most. And so, yeah, I think, Iowa had an advantage for a long time where if there was a really good in-state kid, it was pretty much a shoo-in that they were going to be a Hawkeye. And so I think the fact that Iowa State has emerged as someone that can not only compete with Iowa for these kids, but win them, because Jameson was a Cy-Hawk battle. Kai was a Cy-Hawk battle. Cooper was a Cy-Hawk battle. JJ, a little bit. He had offers from both, but once they signed Marcos, it was a little bit less. But, the fact that Iowa State can pull off those wins just kind of shows the caliber of their sort of recruiting group and what they've built there.
And I mean, you mentioned all the names. Cooper, I don't even know how to pronounce his last name. Is it Ebel?
I think it's Ebel.
Ebel. Okay.
I have not talked to him in person, so if I'm butchering his name, I apologize.
Cooper, Ebel, we'll roll with that. Kai Black, Jameson, Patton. And these guys are from mostly the Des Moines area. JJ Cole, who's from Ankeny. So they're really keeping them around, and you have to think that's a bit of an advantage for them over Iowa City too, because it's a bit less of a travel. You can make that in a day super easily. And when we're talking about these more recent commits, Carson Rhodes is on that list as well, of course, from Nevada. Any of these players stick out to you in that they might be ready to compete for a job quickly? I mean, they're 3-star, 4-star guys. Do you think they can come onto campus as maybe not freshmen, but sophomores, get into the weight room a little bit and can compete for a job in Ames pretty quickly?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd like to say that all of them are, just for, as someone who's not a football player, they're obviously way more talented than me. I think let's start with JJ Cole. He has the size to be a Division I quarterback. He has the experience just from who his dad is, growing up around college and professional players. So he has a wealth of knowledge and experience at his hands. And then seeing what he's done at Ankeny, I mean, it's pretty obvious that he can quickly transition into a new offense. And I think, coming in, being able to learn under Hunter Deckers, the other quarterbacks that Iowa State has, is going to provide him an advantage. I think, he's already kind of slotted into that starting role. That's obviously where they want a 6'6" quarterback to be. So yeah, I think he has the potential to make an impact really early on. I think Kai is another one that I would put up there. I mean, he's been built for the college game since his sophomore year. I mean, freshman to sophomore year, he grew. And he put on weight. And I mean, I think he could still put on a lot of muscle. Most kids do that when they get there. But he can transition so easily from a receiver to a tight end role with Urbandale that, regardless of what Iowa State needs him for, I could see him being more versatile, a big-bodied receiver, a more offensive-minded tight end, that sort of thing, where he already has that ability to kind of fit whatever hole his team needs. And I think that's going to be an advantage for him going into a college program.
Yeah, that versatility is something that's huge. And I mean, you look at a guy like that, and then you start to think about more recent Iowa State receivers like Hakeem Butler, those big dudes who can just go up and get every pass. And again, I haven't watched like any of Kai Black. That's why you're here. But we're talking about recruiting, Iowa State recruiting specifically here with recruiting reporter from the Des Moines Register, Alyssa Hertel. And we've talked a little bit about some of those guys who can compete more quickly, JJ Cole, Kai Black, but how about Carson Rhodes and Jamison Patton? What can you tell us about their game and what they'll bring to Ames?
Yeah, I'll go with Jamison first because, with him being a Des Moines kid, I've seen him just a lot more. I was talking about him yesterday. The best way to describe him is he's a freak athlete in all four of the sports that he plays in high school. But, football specifically, before transferring to Ankeny when he was at Roosevelt, he was starting quarterback. He led the team in rushing yards and a pretty good defensive back too. And so the fact that he's already super offensive minded and he's being slotted into a DB role recruiting wise, that gives him an advantage. And then the fact that he's transferring to Ankeny for his senior year and he's going to build a connection with JJ Cole pretty quickly. They play 7-on-7 together, but Jamison is he's got speed, he's got good footwork, his vision is incredible. And so for me, I think he has a lot of potential for growth and pretty quick growth from that. And Carson Rhodes is just an absolute monster on the field. I mean, he's 6'7", so he's got the size already to be a college tight end. And I think, just seeing some of his clips from Huddle, him playing with Nevada, he's got really, really good vision. He kind of seems to anticipate plays, that sort of thing. And I think, the fact that outside of the football field, he was the first 2023 commit for Iowa State. He has that. He started to get this group going. And I think, that dedication will kind of help him out down the road.
Cooper Ebel and Jamison Patton, both listed as athletes on their recruiting profiles. You mentioned Patton probably more likely to be a defensive back for the Cyclones. Is that what you're thinking?
DB safety.
Okay. How about Cooper?
Linebacker is kind of what they're looking at him for right now, but he's another player that could kind of slot into whatever position they need. He's got super good vision. Looking at his film, he seems like a kid who has somehow stolen every opponent's book and has memorized it because he seems to anticipate plays and is there for a tackle, for an interception. So I think, his football IQ is obviously very high. And I think that's going to play into, moving into a college role.
And for Patton, I mean, he's joining obviously probably the best quarterback in the state, maybe even in the region, and JJ Cole and Ankeny this fall. but he is being focused or looked at as a defensive back for Iowa State. Is there any chance we only see him on the defensive side of the ball for Ankeny this year, or will he be playing both ways? No, based on the look you're giving me, that is an absolute no.
No, he's going to be a receiver at Ankeny. There's no doubt about that. I could see him running the ball too. But, just from a few of their 7-on-7 games this summer, JJ Cole and Jamison Patton are an absolute quarterback receiver threat. I feel really bad for the teams in Iowa that have to play them this year because they just have an impeccable connection. I mean, Jamison is so fast and JJ is so accurate. The two of them together is insanity. So yeah, he's definitely not going to be just a DB at Ankeny, but he'll be fun to watch in both sides.
And there's no Xavier Nwangpa and Southeast Polk to face this year like they had last year. Or like Ankeny had last year for that matter. Definitely one that I think high school football fans in the state and Cyclone fans for that matter are really excited about. I'm not a fan, but I'm excited to see how it turns out as a member of the media. I guess is there any player that you think most Cyclone fans should be the most excited about when you look at this class? Maybe not specific to Iowa, but the whole class. And if you want to go Iowa, great. But the 2023 class is pretty loaded for the Cyclones.
Yeah, I mean, if I went the whole of Iowa, I think Caden Proctor is the obvious choice.
Oh, right, yeah.
for the Cyclones, though, wow, that's a tough question, focusing on those 5 kids that they've brought in. I would say JJ Cole is the obvious choice out of those 5 because you see what Brock Purdy did for Iowa State's program coming in as a freshman. And I think it's really hard to ignore that JJ Cole has the potential to do the exact same thing. And so, all 5 of them, I think, are really exciting commits, but JJ Cole is the one that I think, has the ability to continue building off of what Brock Purdy, Matt Campbell started.
Very interesting. Very, very cool stuff. Again, we're talking with Alyssa Hertel from the Des Moines Register, recruiting reporter for them here on Cornstalks and Sports Talk. You're not just a recruiting reporter, though, Alyssa. The first time we ever had you on Cornstalks, we were talking a little bit about MVC basketball. That's, of course, how we met the MVC tournament. You are the beat writer covering Drake basketball for the Register as well. We talked about it a little bit ago, probably a couple weeks ago here on Cornstalks and Sports Talk was the 4 seniors coming back for Drake basketball: DJ Wilkins, Roman Penn, Garrett Sturtz, and Darnell Brody. The Bulldogs have to be the favorite in the Valley, right?
I mean, with those 4 coming back and having freshman of the year, Tucker DeVries, still on the roster, I mean, yes. Now, they were also the favorite last year, and so things change. But yeah, I think with those 4 coming back, and as long as those 4 are healthy, they have a really good shot to dominate.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, when you look at UNI, the reigning champion of the regular season, AJ Green gone, Noah Carter gone, Tywan Pickford gone, Trey Burhow gone. Austin Fife looks like he's going to be coming back. That's the expectation. But and then, of course, Antoine Kimmett's gone too. That's a big chunk of the roster. A lot of experience there that's just now gone. And then, of course, the conference tournament champion, Loyola, they're out of here, but then you're bringing in Belmont, you're bringing in Murray State, both very good programs. Of course, Murray State looks like they're kind of going to rebuild, but I mean, I can't help but think it's sort of Drake. There's a bit of a separation, and then everybody else, and especially with Darren DeVries leading the program too.
Yeah. And I think, one of the things that I was looking at in the offseason, and it was kind of spurred by Noah Carter entering the transfer portal, was just kind of seeing who from other teams in the MVC was also exploring their transfer portal options. And, to Drake's advantage, to other teams' disadvantage, a lot of the top players across the MVC, across different teams, tried their hand at the transfer portal. Some of them are gone. And so the fact that, top players from other teams leaving, Drake's top players coming back, there's a clear separation there. And I mean, those teams are bringing in other players. I think a big one that I have my eyes on is Matthew Lee from St. Peter's will be joining the MVC. So, you have those guys that are coming in, but Drake off the bat has the chemistry built, has the 4 seniors that, turned this program around coming back. And, clearly not really stopping in terms of the growth with Tucker DeVries coming into a new role.
You mentioned Matthew Lee going to Missouri State. Missouri State also, I think they got a kid who was a 4-star initially that was at Arkansas. They just hammered the portal, and schools like you and I have just kind of been what appears to be second choice for a lot of these guys that they were looking at for the portal. I guess last question for you, Alyssa, before we let you go. Matt Gatens, he's headed to Iowa. You covered the Bulldogs with him and his tenure there. What can you tell Iowa fans about Gatens as a coach? Because we know him as a player.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big loss for Drake. Huge gain for Iowa. He was such a big part of recruiting, of development, just in the program itself. When you have a player like he was at Iowa, joining a coaching staff, and kids can kind of see what his trajectory in the state was, his trajectory in basketball was, that has a huge impact. And then, just the sort of vision that he was able to bring to the game with some of the guys there. I mean, I think it clearly paid off in how Drake has played under, DeVries with Gatens as an assistant coach. And so I think Iowa fans are getting someone that, obviously he's pretty devoted to the Hawkeyes. He's an alum. He's a former player. So, that's an advantage in and of itself. But, he proved that he can, pull in some pretty high level kids to a mid-major school. I'm really intrigued to see what he can do at a high major.
Yeah. And I mean, you mentioned him being a Hawkeye. I talked about it last week. I grew up a Hawkeye fan. Matt Gatens was the man. So people that, might have been younger and looked up to Gatens, that's got to be a recruiting advantage too. She is Alyssa Hertel from the Des Moines Register, recruiting reporter, as well as Drake beat writer for them, at Alyssa Hertel on Twitter. Go give her a follow. Alyssa, thanks so much for hopping on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, don't go anywhere. We got Sean Bach, recruiting specialist of Iowa Hawkeyes football for 24/7 Sports and HawkeyeInsider.com. He is joining us in just a few, so stay with us right here on AM 950 KOEL and KOEL.com for more Cornstalks and Sports Talk.
And we're back here for this third segment and final segment of Cornstalks and Sports Talk on AM 950 KOEL and KOEL.com with me, Eliot Clough, at Eliot Clough on Twitter. And it's not just Iowa State that's hot on the recruiting trail this summer. Iowa has been doing their best to get out there and land some prospects from the 2023 class. That includes 4-star running back Kendrick Rayfield. And now joining us to talk a little bit about that new running back, as well as some of the other members of the 2023 class, is Sean Bach of 24/7 Sports and Hawkeye Insider. Sean, David Eichel told us that you're the man when it comes to Hawkeye recruiting. So we're excited to have you on today, man.
Yeah, Elliot, appreciate you having me. It's been a fun month so far, and then obviously it's supposed to get a little bit better too for Iowa. So looking forward to talking about it.
So tell us what went into the decision by Rayfield. Why is he coming to Iowa?
Yeah, there was actually a lot of NC State buzz with Rayfield throughout the entire recruitment. I know on the 24/7 Sports crystal ball that the Wolfpack had been the favorite for most of the recruitment, or I think those picks were actually thrown in a couple of weeks ago. But, with these guys in recruiting and, a lot of, these guys from Florida, it's a little tougher to get up to places like Iowa City, especially when you live in Naples. And obviously, depending on parental, income and everything like that, it was, it wasn't too easy for Rayfield to get up to Iowa City. But, Iowa continued to put the full court press on. But, NC State got him on campus a couple of times before he ended up visiting Iowa. And Iowa was one of those places where, as we saw last year with the 2022 class and their official visit weekend, how they missed on a number of guys that, generally they don't. Those guys weren't able to get up to campus, build those relationships with the Iowa staff, see a game in Kinnick, or, really get that feel and, that atmosphere that Iowa City has to offer is one of the main, recruiting pitches from this Iowa staff outside of football. So, there was some concern that, things weren't going to be able to go Iowa's way with Rayfield, considering that he's been to Raleigh, many more times, or, a number of times more than Iowa. This is his first time going to Iowa, Florida kids. Iowa's got a good tradition with Florida kids, but, it's more likely to see him go to a place like NC State, where maybe it's a little closer to home. And, NC State was the first offer for him as well. But Iowa really was able to sell him on a number of things. Obviously, from the jump, when I talked to Rayfield, the main thing that stood out to him is Iowa's running back tradition. Having a guy like Liddell Betts, the new running back coach, is a really big plus for Iowa. As we saw in the 2022 cycle, grabbing Caleb Johnson and Jazim Patterson, two guys that, Jazim Patterson, his offers weren't committable later on in his recruiting cycle, but, that's because he had a tougher junior season with COVID and, put on a bunch of weight because of like quarantine and everything. So, his film wasn't as good, but, senior year, he really turned it up a notch. And, a couple other schools are coming at him, but he wanted to stay loyal to Iowa and commit to Iowa. And then, with Caleb Johnson, he was committed to Cal at one point. Also thought there was some thought that he was committed to Iowa State too, but that was more of a silent thing behind the scenes. So, and he was, a fringe 4-star back. I think we had him as a high 3-star, but he's a guy that the Iowa staff thinks can commit or can, come in early and make an impact. So, with Rayfield, I think the big thing too was just, being able to have a guy like Liddell Betts who, knows what it takes to get to the NFL. The system makes a lot of sense for him. I know they run the option in this high school team, but so he's playing like he's playing in a 3-point stance, 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage, while at Iowa, he's in a 3-point stance, or he's in a 2-point stance, 7 yards behind the line of scrimmage. And that makes a lot more sense for him. And, he doesn't have to be as patient in this offense as he does in his high school offense. So, I think it was just a really good fit overall. And it's one of those things where you're kind of like, you get on campus and you're kind of like, all right, this feels right. And, like I said before, with some of those other guys, having a guy like Liddell Betts, who is really important to, that running back room, and, having a guy like Betts who knows what it takes to get to the next level and stay there consistently, I think was a major factor for Rayfield as well, too.
And so you just recently put together an article on Rayfield and what he'll bring to Iowa City. Like you mentioned, obviously 4-star recruit, 1,300 yards rushing last season, 18 touchdowns. His team went 10-1 out of Naples, Florida. Tell us what you learned in writing that article and interviewing his high school head coach. What are the Hawks getting in Rayfield?
Yeah, actually, I mentioned a decent amount in that last part, but, I think when you look at Rayfield, obviously, the option offense is a little unique at that level, especially in high school. And I think it's different with Naples too, because they have another running back that's also going to Arkansas. While, Rick Martin, who I talked to, the Naples head coach, said that Rayfield is more of a natural runner than him, more of a natural running back. And I think that's kind of what Iowa was getting to. He's still pretty raw. There's some things with his game that he's still picking up on. Obviously, speed. I think, his breakaway speed on film is really impressive. How he's able to, get to that second level of the defense and, make guys miss, be pretty fluid with his movements. He understands blocking schemes. He understands, the types of style that Iowa runs, because one of their top plays, Iowa's main plays with their offense is the same one that they run at Naples. So, I just think it's one of those seamless transitions, one of those really natural fits that, you look at some of these Iowa running backs and, I think Gavin Williams was faster than people gave him credit for in high school, mainly because he was dealing with an injury for most of his senior season. LaShawn Williams is more of a compact back. And then you talk about Jazim Patterson, Caleb Johnson. Those two guys are more in between the tackles and more, bouncing off guys. I think Caleb is a little more, speedy for his size, and he gets credit for as well. But, with Rayfield, I think it's more of a complimentary thing because, he can give you that guy that can get between the tackles and, really bounce off tacklers, but he can also show off some speed and get into the open field and really make guys miss. So, I think overall they're just getting a pretty natural, fluid running back who still, I think, has a higher ceiling than I think more people realize, because he's still picking up things on the game and, still trying to get that feel for football. And I think it'll be a really good transition for him too, once he gets to Iowa City.
So we're talking with Sean Bach of 24/7 Sports, Hawkeye Insider. He is covering recruiting for them. And we're talking talking about Kendrick Rayfield. Oh my gosh, never going to get that right, man. Rayfield. the new 4-star running back that is coming from Naples, Florida, and going to be a Hawkeye. One thing we talked with Alyssa Hertel about in this last segment was guys in this 2023 class, specifically where we were talking about the Cyclones, now talking about the Hawks, of course, that can step in and maybe contribute a little bit sooner than other members of the class. Do you see that with Ray Field? I mean, you mentioned the system, you mentioned his ability to be a natural runner. I mean, it sounds like a guy who could come in and contribute right away.
Yeah, I don't know about right away, just because I think that 2022 class is going to be really strong. And, Devin Hilson at Des Moines North in the 2021 class was out for most of spring, but I know the Iowa staff's really excited about him. The Williams duo still have another, 2 or 3 years, maybe more on the 2 side with each other. So I wouldn't say early contributions, but I think he's the guy that can, push it in the room and, potentially make an impact on the line. I don't want to say early contribution, but I think he can mix things up a little bit.
So tell us about the rest of this 2023 class. We spent a lot of time on Ray Field here, but there's some other pretty talented guys, lots of 3-star guys coming in from that 2023 class to Iowa City.
Yeah, we'll start in state. Obviously, you got Harlan Zayden Hall, a 3-star kid from, like I said, Harlan, listed as a linebacker, played safety and wide receiver in high school, put on, about 20 pounds in the last year or so, really looks like a really fluid linebacker. I think he was running sub-11s on the 100-meter dash during the track season. So, that's not really speed that you see at the linebacker position much. Obviously, you got Ben Keeter from Iowa City High, opposite of Hall at the linebacker spot, one of the best wrestlers in the country. I think had like over 40 tackles for a loss this year for City High, something ridiculous like that. He's going to wrestle and play football at Iowa, which will be an interesting adjustment for him. One of the recent commits, David Calker from Des Moines North, defensive lineman, 6'4", 256 pounds, 6'11" wingspan, is pretty raw still, but what the Iowa staff saw from him is potential and, the ability to put on to, maybe to get to 280, 300 pounds and, easily pack on that weight too. You got Zach Lutmer up there from Rock Rapids, a safety that I was really excited about. Could also play the cast position as well. Max Borchin Johnson, a defensive lineman from Norwalk, was more of an early commit, but another guy has a wrestling background and could be a really productive guy. And down the line, I think one of the most important commitments in this class, especially in state, is Marion wide receiver Alex Mota, who Iowa originally saw as a cornerback. And it's interesting because I went up to Marion for a day to see Mota, talk to him a little bit. And, the vibe I got from him and his head coach was that Iowa, was actually running second to Iowa State, mainly because Iowa State saw him as a wide receiver while Iowa saw him as a defensive back. And, I wrote that and that night, Iowa called Mota and was like, hey, like, we want you as a wide receiver. And Mota was like, all right, I'm going to commit then. So that's just kind of a behind the scenes thing for you there. But, as a wide receiver, I think he's really fluid. I think there's still some things he can fix up on, but I think there's some comparison to Arlen Bruce there with how he factors into Iowa's plans. But, I'll go quick with the Iowa State guys. Obviously, Marco Linus, 3-star quarterback from New Jersey. I was really excited about him. Got him early in the class as well. A couple Big Ten schools came in after he committed, but he stayed true to Iowa. John Nestor, a 3-star defensive back from Chicago Marist. Iowa State was a top contender for him, but Iowa was the pick. Really, just seems like your natural, almost like Jack Kerner type, where it's just a guy that can just get down and go to business. Doesn't really need much of the limelight there, but, they've compared him to Riley Moss too. I think he's a few inches shorter. Leighton Jones, who is from Indiana. Iowa staff thinks he can be the next Tyler Linderbaum with his wrestling background at center spot. And then Chase Brackney as well, I know, is a guy that I was really excited about on the defensive line. Had like USC, Nebraska, and I think a Colorado offer as well. He's from the same high school as Alex Padilla, the Iowa backup quarterback. And, it wasn't really a guy that was well known on the recruiting trail, but had a bunch of offers and, is another name that Iowa thinks is going to be a really good player down the line. So, this class is really have a strong base to it. I think with obviously getting Linus early in the class was really important and, getting a couple weapons around him too, like Mota and Ray Field. I think this offense in this class is going to be really dynamic. And, I think it has a lot more potential too to build in the next couple of weeks, especially with some of these guys that they have coming on campus too. And, Iowa really prides himself on building their classes on the offensive and defensive line. And, obviously I think you're going to hit on those more often than not, especially a program like Iowa and, at the defensive back spot too. But, I think getting these skill position guys is really important as well. And, they've done a good job with that.
We're talking with Sean Bach, who covers recruiting pretty extensively, clearly, for the Hawkeye Insider and 24/7 Sports here on Cornstalks and Sports Talk on AM 950 KOEL and KOEL.com. Sean, one name that you mentioned as part of the class that is out of state is Marco Lainez III. Iowa's gotten some higher profile quarterbacks in the Kirk Ferentz era like him before that just maybe didn't necessarily pan out the way Hawk fans hoped they would. I mean, see Deuce Hogan, Spencer Petras, Peyton Mansell more recently, and then you go back a little bit to players like Jake Christensen. What's different about Lainez? Is he gonna break that mold? Is he gonna be? I don't necessarily want to say a star, but somebody who's gonna come in and produce at a high level for the Hawks?
That is a fantastic question because there was obviously a lot of hype for Spencer Petras, and you can honestly make multiple podcasts out of what breaking down his career so far. Alex Padilla, he was kind of a middle of the road guy, but he got an offer from Georgia later on in the recruiting process, so there was talk about him. Deuce Hogan obviously didn't pan out there. Joey Lavis is a name that I was really excited about in the quarterback room. They think he can live up to his 4-star ranking eventually. You got Carson May in the 2023 class, 2022 class, who's a high composite 3-star. I think one site has him as a 4-star. More of a raw type player, I think, athletically, but they like how he can run and he can make some throws. And I think the big transition for him will be making it to the Big Ten from 2A ball in Oklahoma. But with Lainez, I think it's going to be different from the perspective of, he's a little more molded than I think some of the other guys are. I think he's a really good athlete. I think he's 6'2", 225 pounds, something around there. But yeah, I mean, he can move too. I think that's a really promising thing. He can move well in the pocket. But as far as moving the needle, I think that's going to be a really interesting conversation point that will go on for the most of his career. I think he will be the starter eventually. Obviously, you got to see what the quarterback room looks like down the line. You never really know with the transfer portal, everything. But, when it comes to moving the needle, I think he can. It's just a matter of, can this offense really change? Do they decide to open up the playbook? Do they, hold them back a little bit? I think with Lavis, I think you're starting to see, from what we've heard in practice is that things are starting to open up a bit. He's making some of these plays that you don't generally see Iowa quarterbacks play or do. But, will that continue on to the game field when he's a starter? And I think with Lainez, he can make almost every throw in the book. He's accurate. He can move really well. He's shorter than some of these Iowa quarterbacks. It's just a matter of, can he really put it all together? And I think, he might be the most molded guy in the quarterback, coming in to Iowa, like compared to some of these other guys. I think you can make an argument for Alex Padilla too, but I think, Lainez has the most, put together skill set right now. But, he comes from a really good high school program. I think that's a really important thing to mention as well. But, I'm just waiting to see. That's my big thing. I think he can be a difference maker in this offense. I mean, I love his skill set, love what he brings. It's no joke that some of these schools were coming in after he committed to, get him. I mean, Michigan State, who's on a roll now, the day before he committed to Iowa, came in and, tried to make the last second push. And, I think that's a really important thing to mention as well, that a lot of schools think he can be a potential winner and a guy that can make a difference. Will it be him? Will it be Joey Lavis? Will it be Spencer Petras this year? Will it be Carson May? I mean, will it be Alex Padilla? I don't know. The thing that doesn't hurt is that you have so many options. But, with Lainez, I think there is just that little extra gear that might be a difference maker with this team and with this program. But, I don't know when it'll be. And, I'm not expecting him to start early or anything. I usually say year 2, year 3 is when you can really consider someone to be a part of the quarterback competition. But, we just got to see what the room is like. But I think from a skill set perspective and, maturity wise and, understanding Iowa's system and what he can do, I think there's a chance for him to, maybe break the mold of that, stigma. But I wouldn't be shocked if there's a guy before him like Joey Lavis that could do the same in due time. I really do. I think Lyons is a great pickup. He will be. I think he'll factor into that conversation eventually. It's just a matter of, how soon or, who can emerge before him.
Hawk fans are crossing their fingers. Sean, we appreciate you joining here on a Saturday morning. Go give him a follow. He is from Hawkeye Insider and 24/7 Sports. Does a great job covering Iowa recruiting at SBach247 on Twitter. Again, that's at SBach247. Go give him a follow. Sean, we appreciate you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Eliot.
So that'll do it for this week's episode of Cornstalks and Sports Talk. If you missed any of the 3 segments from today's show, you can always listen to the whole thing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you have the chance or the opportunity to subscribe or leave a rate and review, most likely on Apple Podcasts, and you do that, that would help us out a lot. Again, you can listen to these segments with guests on YouTube as well. Just find me on there at Eliot Clough, also at Eliot Clough on Twitter if you want to follow along with more UNI insider information from me. Once again, folks, thanks so much for tuning in today on AM 950 KOEL and KOEL.com for another week's edition of Cornstalks and Sports Talk.
What's the easiest choice you can make? Window instead of middle seat? Picking a vendor who sends a great gift basket? Outsourcing business tasks you hate? What about selling with Shopify? Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your online shop stage to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit 1 million orders stage. Shopify's there to help you grow. Whether you're selling scented soap or offering outdoor outfits, Shopify helps you sell. Wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/try. Go to shopify.com/try now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/try.